Hello and welcome to the question web chat on what is the progress of the Global Payments Innovation Initiative. We are going to be discussing what is GPI and the progress it's made so far and what we can expect in 2017. We are joined by Stanley Wachs, Global Head of Banking Engagement and Global Payments Innovation at SWIFT. Previously, he worked at PayPal and Western Union and has significant experience across the world. Stanley, I believe the Global Payments Initiative by SWIFT and the banks is probably the most important development in payment systems in the last decade. But what is it? What does it do?
Hi, Jack. Indeed, so with SWIFT GPI, the Global Payments Innovation Initiative that we launched at the end of 2015, with at that time 45 banks joining to deliver a new standard in cross-border payments, and namely a faster, more transparent and traceable cross-border payments experience for the benefit of corporates. So what is the GPI, Global Payments Innovation Concept? Well, firstly, it brings together a worldwide group of global transaction banks that together have developed a new rulebook, a new set of business rules that will deliver a much better payment experience. This will be done leveraging the existing SWIFT infrastructure, whereby also we will, for the benefit of the banking community on GPI, be developing and deploying 3 products for GPI members. A payments tracker that will allow payments to be tracked at any time along the payment chain, as well as provide information around the fees, the time the transaction took, and when the amount of the transaction has been credited on the beneficiary's account. On top of that, there will be also a directory that will inform banks on each other's operational capabilities, currencies available, cutoff times of different banks, for example, will be in that directory, allowing GPI members to connect and know how to connect with each other. And then on top of that, because also the banking community on GPI wanted more control on the quality and the adherence to the rulebook, we will be developing an observer, and this observer will ensure that everybody knows who is delivering on the rulebook. So the core principles of GPI, in a nutshell, to begin with in this first release, are around same-day usage of funds. So that means that a corporate will be able, on the same day, again, depending on the beneficiary's time zone, the beneficiary bank's time zone, to receive the funds on the same day and be used. Transparency will be provided on the fee structure, as well as end-to-end payments tracking capabilities will be provided through the payments tracker database that I talked about. And then last but not least, we will also be ensuring that remittance information is transferred unaltered. This provides benefits to corporates in terms of facilitating, namely, reconciliation of invoices.
The biggest transformation in a way is, for the first time ever, the banks have agreed to have this, you call it, observer, who monitors the control of and the implementation of the standards. Isn't that going to get you an awful lot of problems?
So on the contrary, this will be a guarantee level of service quality than today. This is a very important piece of the overall value proposition, is for banks to be able to see who is adhering to the rulebook, and also with the observer to help banks improve their service quality if and then they are not able to fully deliver on the set of business rules. So this is extremely important: more control, more quality. But actually, in the overall value-added product suite, the game changer is the payments tracker. This is something that does not exist today. Corporate treasurers often say when a transaction has been sent internationally, it's like a black hole. you never really know where it is. You don't have the ability to track that payment. Corporates, through their bank on GPI, will be able to get that information, and this will have significant benefits for corporates.
So if we just look at the benefits a little bit more, the faster same-day use of funds, you mentioned the time zone problem, but that is going to be quite complex, isn't it?
So actually, what we are achieving here is providing corporates with more precision, more certainty on the transaction time. So we will deliver, to begin with, and have agreed with the GPI members, a faster same-day service. What that means is that it will depend on the time zone of where the receiving GPI member is in. For example, for a transaction sent from Europe to Asia, if the cutoff time of the receiving GPI member bank indicated in the directory is, for example, 4 p.m., and the amount or the information is received by the receiving member bank at 3:30 p.m., well, what that means is that if for a transaction sent before that time, the receiving bank will be able to credit the beneficiary's account on the same day. That's what that means. Time zone of the receiving GPI member bank to be able to deliver on the same day usage of funds.
The ability, yes, but will they actually do it?
They will do it because they have agreed as part of the rulebook to do it, to deliver on this faster same-day usage of funds is the first feature of the new set of business rules, call them business practices, that the 91 banks that have signed up to GPI today have agreed to adhere to. So yes, they will deliver on that.
Yes, I have a little doubt. You've had rules for years, SWIFT. Okay, you're now agreeing processes rather than standards of format, but even so, it's going to take a long while for the global network of banks to really adhere to common processes.
So I'd like to challenge that, Jack. Of course, there will be a gradual ramp up and adoption as we move into 2017 and beyond. So today we have in 2016 actually done a very successful pilot with 21 banks, global banks from around the world. As we'll see in the progress update that I can share with you in more details as to what has happened in 2016, we have successfully tested with a group of pilot banks, 15 actually, that this works and they can deliver on this same day promise. So it can happen, it will happen, it works. We have tested the functionalities of the rulebook with these pilot institutions, and we will now be working on deploying the service in 2017 and then going for broader adoption in 2017 and beyond.
Accepted, you are trying, but it's still an astonishing achievement if you get there. But in terms of the benefits for the corporates, what do you think is the most important single benefit?
I think the one real single benefit is the ability to track a payment. And this will be available at the end of this year to GPI member banks via a payments tracking database that we have developed, hosted by SWIFT. This will enable corporates to know where their payment is and when it has reached the beneficiary's account. That's the single main benefit that I would see.
And will it check individually whereabouts the payment is? Say it's going through 3 banks. Will it show you first bank, second bank, and then the third bank?
That's exactly it. The payments tracking database will show where a payment is along the chain, at which bank it is, at which bank it has, and when it has reached, the final bank. This will be available in the payments tracking database.
And that clearly will enhance supplier relationships, because I've witnessed great tension in corporate treasury departments where they don't know where the payment is. It saves a lot of time in terms of treasury efficiency. So Where are you in terms of progress?
So we've made significant progress in 2016. Let's not forget that we kicked off this initiative in December 2015. So actually 1 year ago. In 1 year, we have already 91 banks from across the world, Europe, Middle East, Africa, the Americas region, Asia Pacific, that have signed up to GPI, so the Global Payments Innovation Initiative. Well,
is there a published list of GPI members?
Yes, this list is available on the swift.com/GPI website, or we have also developed on the Apple Store a very elegantly designed app for iPad, which has this information. The full list is available there also. Now, 91 banks, that's already potentially payments to 224 countries. And those 91 banks already do 75% of all SWIFT cross-border traffic. So that's the first and foremost progress. I think the second progress since the beginning of the year is that we have agreed on a new set of business rules and technical specifications, of course. The third piece of progress is the game-changing innovative payments tracker that we have developed. In fact, we demoed it at Cybos, and this will be available at the end of 2016. So imagine, just under 1 year, we already have developed a game-changing tool that banks will be able to use and will decide how they make it available to their corporate clients. And then last but not least, we've also made progress on developing a broader vision around GPI, what we call a strategic roadmap, which will have multiple other services and products available in the years to come.
Going back to the tracker, that will be inundated with users, won't it? Or does the bank decide whether they allow a user to access it or not?
So the bank indeed will develop its strategy to give access to the tracker to their corporate client. This banks are still defining how that will happen and especially what information they want to share.
So there will be a difference between the banks.
Yes, so not everybody and anybody will be able to use the tracker. As you can imagine, there's a lot of information in there. So banks will decide on the user access and also how their corporate clients will access it. But this is a key element of the value proposition for banks to their corporate customers.
And so how's the pilot and onboarding going?
So we kicked off the pilot in February. 21 banks were in that and are in that pilot. 15 global banks have already successfully tested the functionalities. And what I can tell you is that it works. In fact, 10 additional banks are even starting to prepare their onboarding for a launch that will happen in 2017. In the first quarter of 2017, we will be going live with GPI. I think also one learning that we saw is that from an implementation standpoint, for banks, this is a project under 6 months. So the pilot in a nutshell is on track and will be concluded at the end of 2016. The service will go live early 2017.
It'll go live bank by bank, won't it? So the corporates need to ask their bank exactly when they are going live.
Yes, so actually corporates of these pilot banks, some corporates, at least some pilot corporates, will be involved in order to test the end-to-end functionality. And then going forward, to your point, indeed, the demand of corporates should be channeled through their bank that is on GPI.
This is stunning progress. It's far faster and far more global than almost anything SWIFT have done in the last 30 years. Part of that is pressure because the fintech companies are already offering these sorts of services. Now the banks you can get it from your banks direct. In terms of the strategic plan going forward, What are the key elements of this?
So first and foremost, indeed, with GPI, we are here preparing the next chapter of correspondent banking. It's a super strategic initiative that has rallied and got great momentum across the banking industry, that's for sure. Now, going forward, the key elements of the deployment and the expansion, the delivery of GPI across the world to more banks and to corporates and to other client segments in the future will first and foremost be around, of course, more banks joining the initiative. Secondly, around broader adoption and implementation of GPI so that the service is then available, commercialized by banks to their corporate clients. Now, in parallel to that, as I mentioned, we also will be and are already scoping different additional payment services that banks will be able to provide to their corporates. Subjects such as requesting to be paid, for example, or another opportunity around potentially stopping a transaction, canceling a transaction. We will also be, last but not least, looking at how we can bring in new emerging technologies into GPI, depending on what additional area or efficiency we want to yield. So actually, 2017, again, will be around broader adoption, going live, actively engaging with corporate clients also, whilst preparing for the future of the years to come.
Thank you, Stanley. This quite clearly is one of the most important initiatives in payment systems for many years. I wish you luck with it, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack.